If you're buying your first home in Garland, Texas, you're probably going to hear the words option period pretty quickly after your offer is accepted. And this is one deadline you really need to understand. The option period is more than just time to get a home inspection. It's a short decision making window where you learn more about the home, evaluate any significant concerns, and decide how you want to move forward. I'm Ginger McCallum, a realtor serving Garland, Texas, and the surrounding DFW communities. And let me walk you through what actually happens. When does the option period start? Once the contract is executed, I immediately start tracking all of your important dates, and the option period is one of the big ones. I make sure my buyers know exactly when it starts and exactly when it ends, because this isn't an open-ended period. We have a deadline, and there are several things we may need to accomplish before we get there. One of my jobs during this part of the transaction is to make sure we're not suddenly looking at the calendar and realizing we've run out of time. How many days should you ask for? There isn't one number I automatically use for every buyer. Typically, I'm looking somewhere around 5 to 7 days, and I often prefer 7. But I also look at what day we expect the contract to execute. If we execute on a Friday and can't get an inspector to the property until Monday, I may want 7 to 10 days. But if we execute on a Monday and can get an inspector there Tuesday, 5 days might work. So, I'm not just counting calendar days. I'm thinking about how much usable time we're actually going to have to get the inspection completed, understand what was found, and decide whether we need to do anything about it. I also consider how competitive the offer situation is. If the listing agent tells me they're expecting multiple offers, the option period becomes one of the terms we consider as part of an overall offer strategy. What actually happens at the inspection? Once we're under contract, we want to get the inspection scheduled as soon as reasonably possible. At the end of the inspection, I typically meet my buyer and the inspector at the property. In my experience, inspectors will often spend about 30 to 45 minutes walking the buyer through what they found. And this is really helpful for first-time buyers because an inspection report can look scary. There can be a lot of items on it. The inspector explains the condition of the home and their findings. I'm there listening alongside my buyer and helping provide some real estate context. Sometimes something sounds alarming, but it's actually fairly commonplace or relatively minor. Other times I'll hear something and think, okay, this is something we need to talk about after we finish the review. My job isn't to replace the inspector. It's to help my buyer understand what deserves attention and decide what happens next. Does the seller have to fix everything on the inspection report? No. And this is something I really want first-time buyers to understand. An inspection report is not automatically a repair list for the seller. When we review the findings, I generally focus on 3 things: major systems, safety issues, and potentially expensive problems. We're not trying to turn every little maintenance item into a negotiation. Homes aren't perfect. The bigger question is whether the inspection revealed something that could meaningfully affect your decision to buy the home. That's where I want our attention. Should you ask for a repair or a concession? If we identify something significant, we have to decide how we want to approach it. When appropriate, I often prefer discussing whether a credit or seller concession makes sense instead of automatically asking the seller to complete the repair. Why? Because after closing, you may be able to select your own contractor and have the work completed on your own schedule. Maybe it's an HVAC issue. Maybe there's a wall repair. Depending on the situation, you may prefer controlling how that work gets done yourself. Of course, credits and concessions have to work within the contract and your financing and lender requirements, so they aren't automatic. But there are also situations where I may want to approach the repair differently. If it's something really major that could potentially cascade into other problems, we may want to consider asking the seller to address it before closing. Foundation work is a good example. Significant foundation work can potentially affect other components of the home, including plumbing. So, we look at the actual issue rather than using the same solution for every repair. What if the inspection changes your mind? Sometimes you learn something during the inspection that makes you truly uncomfortable with the home. And you may decide, I don't want to move forward with this purchase. If your contract gives you the right to terminate during the option period and you decide to exercise that right, there is a process we follow. We complete the appropriate written notice, get it signed, and make sure it's properly delivered before the applicable deadline. I also make sure the title company receives the necessary documentation so they can begin their process related to the termination. This is exactly why I track that option deadline so closely. You don't want to decide you're uncomfortable moving forward only to discover that an important contractual deadline has already passed. The big takeaway: if you're buying your first home, I want you to remember this. The option period isn't just inspection time, it's decision making time. We need to know the deadline, get the property inspected, understand what the inspector found, focus on the issues that actually matter, and then decide whether you're comfortable moving forward. Whether there's something we want to discuss with the seller or whether another decision needs to be made. That's also a good example of how I use my confident move method with first-time buyers. You don't have to understand every part of the transaction all at once. We focus on what needs your attention right now. Make that decision and then move forward to the next step. If you're buying your first home in Garland, Texas, or one of the surrounding DFW communities, I'm Ginger McCallum. My goal is to help you understand what's happening, what's coming next, and what decisions actually need your attention so you can move through the process with more confidence. You can find more first-time homebuyer resources at gingermccallumhomes.com. And if this video helped answer one of your questions, subscribe because I'm adding new Garland real estate videos every week.